Welcome! In this project we are going to learn how to set the page out not just with things one above each other, but as a grid. So you can see here we've got blocks of text and a picture, and it's in a 3x3 grid. Now mine is a quotes page. Yogi Berra is a famous baseball player and manager from many decades ago, and I'll just zoom in a little bit here. He was always used to say hilarious things at press conferences, and a lot of his sayings have sort of come into be regular English, like it ain't over till it's over. You might have heard that before. That comes from him. So I've put his picture in the middle and then some of his quotes around the outside. But you don't have to do a quotes page. You could do a tips page, for example, have a picture of a particular video game or sport in the middle and have tips around the outside. So anything that you'd like to do a 3x3 grid on, let's get stuck in. So let's get started. Can you go to Google and type in JS, just the letters J and S, Fiddle, F-I-D-D-L-E, and it should come up with the result JSFiddle Code Playground, and if you click on that. So let me just explain what JSFiddle is. It's basically a very, very useful website that you can type your web development code here, and the result will appear here. So for example, at a very, very simple level, I can just type hello and hit run, and the result will appear over here. It's not very interesting, obviously, at the moment, but we can improve that. So the first thing I'd like you to do at JSFiddle is to create yourself an account. So if you click sign in here, and then you can click on sign up. Okay, so hopefully you've paused and done that. The next thing I'd like you to do is to click on the settings over here and click on tabs, columns. So basically, again, I'll just type the hello and I'll explain here. Basically, there are multiple different languages that you will be typing code in. The main ones are HTML and CSS, and in fact, I'm just going to drag CSS over there because we're not using JavaScript for this particular mini project. So HTML is like the content of your page, the text, the images, those sorts of things, and CSS is the style, basically making it look good. So we can flick back and forth between those two and we can see the result over here. So just again, you go to settings, click on tabs, columns, and then click away. Now I just want to explain quickly how the saving system works in JSFiddle. So every time I make a change or even just hit save, you'll probably notice that the number on the end here, it might be hard to see, but it goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, etc. This is because JSFiddle uses something called version control, which means that every single time you save it, all your previous copies are saved as well. So if you decide that, oh no, I completely messed up what I'm doing, I want to go back to version 1 instead of version 2, I can just put that in the bar here and it will go back to the previous version. Also, if you click over here on the blue icon and go to your fiddles, you'll see that it will save, it's only got one obviously, but it will save all of your projects here, and if you click on there it will go to the latest version. So for me it's version 2 up there. So as you can see here, we've started in a pretty normal way. We simply have an H1 or a heading 1 tag where we have Yogi Berra quotes, and then under this I'm going to make my 3x3 grid. So I think we'll make the grid first, and then maybe we'll color it in so you can see the grid, and we'll have a bit of a play around with it, and then after that we'll start putting content into it. So first things first. We are going to make a new section. Now if you want to make a new section on your page, but it's not a particular thing like an ordered list or a heading, you can use a more generic div like this, and it'll be div/div. This is used a lot in HTML programming. So the div is short for division or a section of the page. Now another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to give this div a particular class. Now the idea of a class is is you can say any div that has the same class we can give specific stylings to in the CSS. So a little bit like here you could say anything that's a paragraph we'll style in the same way. Like that here I can make up a class for this div and say any div that has that class name we can style it in a certain way. And I'm going to call this grid. Now I just made that name up, but it makes sense because we're making a grid. Now that's going to be the outside of our grid. Inside this div, we are going to actually, if I tab in here, we're going to need 9 little sub divs. And I'm going to, just to make it simple for the moment, I'm going to put them like this. And I'm just going to write text in the middle because we'll be putting text in there later, but I want something to show up on the screen. And I'm just going to, for the moment, do 9 of those. I might do a block of 3. So please pause and follow along if you need to. Okay. And as you can see currently, they are all just one above the other over here. So they're not in their nice layout of 3 by 3, but that's what we're going to be changing very, very soon. Now the way that we turn this into an actual grid is we go into the CSS, and remember this section we've given the class name grid. And so if you want to target all of the divs in your web page, you would say, oops, you'd say div like that, but we only want to target the class of grid, and the way that you do that is dot grid. So if it's a class, you put a dot before it, and that anything that we've put in the class grid will have these properties. And the most important one is we're going to say display, we're going to set it to a grid style. I'll just save that. Okay, so now it is set up as a grid, and we just need to tell it how many columns and rows there are. So what we can type in is grid template columns. We actually want 3 columns, so there'll be 1, 2, 3. So 3 columns, and each of those columns will be the same one fraction of it, which will be the same. So the 3 the 3 columns will be the same fraction each. So let's save that and see what it does. Okay, so you can see here that basically the text has been split up into 3 columns of equal fractions each. Okay, so don't worry too much. You can delve later on into how the grid system works, CSS Grid. It's quite powerful, and there are a lot of things you can learn about it, but we're just getting started here. So if it doesn't make perfect sense and I haven't explained it very well, don't stress too much. Now, just before we continue, I'm happy that we've put it into sections here, but I would just basically like to show where those sections are. So what I might do is I think we will try and just show each cell in the grid here. Now remember, if we go back to HTML, all of these are divs here, and what we can say in the CSS is any div that is inside something of class grid. So this is the div that's inside the div of class grid. So you have the class here and then the inside div. Let's give it a background color of light gray, G-R-A-Y, American spelling. And you can see all of the cells are gray, but we can't see the spaces between them. So let's give a little bit of a margin. We'll do, let's say, 5 pixels. And now you can actually see that we have these cells. So the final thing that we might do is I probably want this text in the center here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I think for the moment, we'll just say that the text align in the grid will all be center, C-E-N-T-E-R. And now you can see there we have our 9 different cells, 3 by 3. In fact, the final thing, I know I've said that a few times, is I might just add a bit of padding to each of the cells. So we'll say maybe 3 pixels of padding. Remember, the padding is inside the border, the margin is outside the border. Now the borders are invisible here, but the border is at the edge of the gray, so the padding on the inside, margin on the outside. The next step for me, I think, is I'm going to put some of the quotes in here. It'll be number 1, 2, 3, 4 will be quotes. Number 5 will be the image, and 6, 7, 8, 9 will be quotes as well. So I'm going to go across to the HTML and I'm going to insert the quotes into here. I'm going to pause. I suggest you probably do the same and put either some quotes or just a bit of placeholder text in there. Okay, so you can see now that I have added all of my different quotes in here. Now, if you are typing a lot of text in yours and it's going over different lines, you might like to set it up like this. You can tab in once, line that up like that, and have a space between them. If I do that for a few, you'll start to see that that's actually quite readable if you have longer pieces of text. I don't really have longer pieces of text, so I'm probably just going to leave it like this. Now, for the moment, I've just put the word image in there, but instead, I'm going to put inside this div, this box, or this cell, I'm going to put an image. So I'm going to say img, src is source, equals, let's go and get a picture. So I can type in Yogi Berra and go to images. I think this is the one here that I used, so I'll right click on it and go to copy image address and paste it in there. And as you can see, it has come up absolutely insanely huge. So what we might have to do is we might have to say that we'll set the width to 100%. And we will save that. And it is now back to normal. Now, you'll see here that there is a little bit of gray behind the image. That doesn't really matter because I'm not actually going to be keeping this gray. This is just to show us where the divs are at this point. You don't necessarily have to have the image inside the div. You could get rid of this div and the image itself would just be one of the elements of the grid, and that would also change the way that it looks. But I think I'm just going to keep it simple here. There are 9 divs in this grid, and then inside those divs we can put anything else that we want. Okay. So you should go and get yourself a picture that matches up with whatever you're making and put in your quotes as well. And the final thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change this text align. In grids we have a special property called align items. And then if we save that, you'll notice that everything got placed in the center of the space where the grid is. Now that's messed up our backgrounds a little bit, but I'm not going to actually use the backgrounds, so it doesn't really matter that much. So you can see here that everything has been placed in the center. I'm also going to go and get rid of this background color and hit save, because all of mine are going to basically be just out in space like that. I think it's time to change some of the fonts and colors. I actually usually do this pretty early in a project because it really helps me get a feel for how I should set the website up and even sometimes what the content should be. So let's go to Google Fonts. I'm going to copy and paste my title so that when I get to Google Fonts, which is this one here, Fonts for Google Developers, or see available fonts. Where it says sentence, I can Control V, and then I can see my heading in all of these different fonts. Now I'm pretty sure the one that I used, or I'll just check, was Charm by the looks of things. So but you can search through and find a font that looks good for what you want it to be. I wanted a sort of a cursive, handwritten sort of style. So I'm going to remove Titan 1, scroll down, and add, should I do regular or bold? I think that it's a heading, I might go bold. So I'll click on that and scroll down. Don't get the style tags, copy this and go to our CSS and paste it in. We can then say that our H1 tag will have font family. I can just copy from here. Font family Charm. So this up here imports the font from Google Fonts, and this here sets all our headings to that font. Perfect. Now I've noticed that's probably not really big enough, so I might say font size equals 64 pixels. Perfect. Okay, while we're at it, let's make a body tag. This will apply to everything in the page. And in fact, what I might do is I might put the font there because I think that the font I'd like to apply to everything on the page. And if I put it in the body, it'll cascade down. That's what CSS is, cascading style sheets. It'll cascade down to all the levels below it. Okay, just to be clear, not below it on the page here, but below it in terms of importance. The body of the page is more important and more general than the specific tag of heading. Okay, so font family, that's looking a little bit better. In the body, let's say text align center, C-E-N-T-E-R, American spelling. So that's looking a lot better. Everything's over in the middle. Just while I'm at it, the grid divs, the divs inside the grid, I'm thinking we might just add a little bit more margin, just to spread them out a little bit there as well. Okay, next I think will be a background color. So in the body, background color, and we might go to color picker. So we can select a color, and I'm probably going to go with a dark green. I want something quite dark. Maybe something that sort of reminds me of grass at night, where the color starts to get washed out of it because there's not that much light for our eyes to see it with. And I will copy the hex code and I will paste that in there. I will then make the font color, or just color, be white. There we go. I'm not sure I'm entirely happy with that background color. I'm just off screen, I'm finding a better color. Yeah, I think we go darker. Now, another thing that's kind of interesting is with the color picker is sometimes you don't want fully white text. If I forget about the color, it doesn't matter, but if I drag over to the left here and I drag up into the corner, no, it won't let me drag. I guess I have to just come down here. If I just pull down a little bit so it's like a really light gray and copy this, sometimes a light gray will just be a little bit less jarring on the eyes than having a full white. Okay, Okay, so that's barely noticeable, but it just takes the edge off it, and you can go as far sort of towards dark grey as you like, but it just makes it a little bit less jarring. So at this point, you might legitimately say that the page is pretty much done, but if you're interested, if you think it works for your project, we are going to attempt to put an image as the background, and we're going to try and do it in a bit of a clever way, which may or may not work, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so I've gone over to Google and I'm looking for a baseball field to go behind the image. Yogi Berra was a baseball player and a baseball manager, so you would find an image that made more sense for your particular project. I just want to show you quickly, if you click on Tools and go to Usage Rights and select Creative Commons licenses, you will get copyright-free images, which becomes more and more important as you start making sites that you really care about instead of just practice sites. I'm going to choose this picture here, and I'm going to right-click and copy the image address. And what we can do is, as a basic first attempt, we can, in the body here, we can say background image, and we can say URL with brackets, and oops, I think we're going to need talking marks on that, and I might have to put them in first because it always creates them together, and then I split and put them in there. Okay, so there are some problems with this. Okay. First of all, it's really huge, and we've just got the light here. Second of all, even if it did work, it's probably too light, and I want to actually make the image slightly see-through. So what we're going to do is we're not going to put the image in this way. We are going to experiment with something else. What we're going to do is, if you go to the HTML over here, we are going to take everything that we've done so far, hit tab so it goes in, and put this inside a box or a cell. We'll call it a div, and we'll say the class of this div is content. Okay, so we have the div class is content. Now I'm going to take it's automatically made the end of that division, and we're going to put that at the very end. So you can see here, everything we've done so far is actually now inside this box called content. And then above this, I'm going to make another div, and this one I'm going to call background, or I'll give it the class of background. Maybe BG, if I'm feeling lazy. So we'll say div class equals background. Okay. Now inside of that, we're going to put our image. So we'll do an image tag. Oops. I have too many end divs. In here, we're going to put our image source equals. I always have to hit quotation marks twice for some reason on JSFiddle. Oh no. Okay, let me go and get that link again. So right click, copy image address. Okay. And I will close that. Okay, and I might say width equals 800 pixels. Okay, now you'll see that what we have is we have the background image, and then we have the Yogi Berra quotes underneath. So there are two things I want to do. Number one is I want to make this slightly transparent so you can sort of see through it to the background color and make it darker overall. And the other thing is I want this to end up on top of this. So let's see if we can achieve those things one at a time. First of all, how do we make it slightly see-through? So it's a class called BG. So if we go into here and we'll say .bg, so anything of the BG class, we will say opacity equals 0.3. Now opacity, you can see that's worked perfectly. Opacity is the opposite of transparency. So an opacity of 1 means that something is not see-through at all. It's not transparent at all. An opacity of 0 means it's fully transparent. You can't see it at all. So 0.3 is like pretty transparent, more transparent than opaque. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we want the everything here to be up here. Now the way that we do that is we make the position fixed. That means in a fixed place, i.e. the top of the page. So the position of, there we go, the position of expected new line before in a multi-line block. I don't know why it's complaining at us, but it seemed to work. So if you make the position of something fixed, it means that it goes to like the top, and everything else can sort of float above it. And the other thing that we might do with the background is we might say make it 100% wide. I don't know if we actually need to do that necessarily. Okay, now another thing that we're going to do before we fix that issue is we're just to be sure, I'm going to make another one of these for the content, because as you'll remember, we had the background div and then the content here. So we'll go back to the CSS and the content, this has happened automatically, but the position should be relative. So fixed position for the background means it's always up the top. Relative means it can float. Okay, that's a very simplistic explanation, but don't worry too much about it for the moment. Okay, and that's actually good because I think it's now come out from behind it, which looks a lot better. Now the second problem, or the final problem we have here is we actually want to limit the width of everything to 800 pixels. So let's see if we can work out how to do that. Obviously I've made a mistake here. Width should be 100% for the background, and the content on top, which is, I'll show you, hold on. Content on top that is not sticking to the 800 pixels like the image. So we should say the content should be width equals 800 pixels and the margin should be auto, which will mean that each side will have the same margin, so it will be in the center. And now you can see that seems to be working quite well. So don't forget to hit save, set as base, that takes away that version number, and you can click on show to see it full screen, and hopefully you will have your wonderful website and you can copy this link and share, etc. Have fun.